I think that video content is better than text content. I don't know about you, but I'd much rather, if I'm doing something like this, if I'm on the membership site, I'd much rather sit down, watch a video rather than listen to or read an article about a subject. I just find that it's easier to translate across to you guys. It's more natural. It's like straight from my heart. It's my thoughts. I'm not overthinking about things. I'm just saying it as it is, and it is just fucking generally better. So instead, if you guys like this, I'm gonna do talk about books, talk about what I've learned from each book, or as a video rather than an article. And I've also set myself the goal of reading one book per week. I don't want to do a book a month anymore. My next goal is going to be a book every 2 weeks, which I'm currently working on. I'm on a book like this fucking thick. And then I want to be doing a book a week by summer. By next month, I want to be reading a book a week. I want to be absolutely smashing it, because I'm not a naturally fast reader. I'm slow at reading. I'm just generally like a bit dyslexic, a bit retarded. I've never in my mind would I ever be able to think that I would be able to read a book a week. The book I'm going to be talking about is Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And before we get into it, I'm just going to give you guys some speed reading tips, okay? Tip number 1 is reading aid. Get a reading aid. Get something to put under the lines and basically just move it down. I have ADHD, so I can't concentrate on I struggle to concentrate on one thing. I'm like, my mind's always going at a million miles an hour. I'm trying to do other things as I'm doing this. So by using a reading aid, what I find is that I can read a whole lot quicker. Number 1 is use a reading aid. Number 2 is don't read the words out loud. So just read them in your head. Don't say the sentences. Number 3 is only look at the inner 2/3 of the page. So when you're reading, only consciously look at this part of the text in the middle, and your brain will basically fill in the blank spaces either side, and it will make perfect sense. And if it doesn't make sense, you just read an extra word if you're struggling. But basically, you can read quicker by doing that. So reading aid, only looking at the inner 2/3 of the page. And then the other thing I find as well, it really helps, is listening to classical music while you read. There's studies that show that if you listen to classical music whilst you read, it improves your recall memory, like of being able to recite what you've read, so more goes in, and you can read quicker as well. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. So in short, what the book is about is it goes over this notion that we as humans are always looking into the future for happiness. People are always looking for reasons to be happy. They're always in the sense that, oh, I'll be happy when I get this. I'll be happy when this happens. I'll be happy when I get to this period of time. And we're always looking for this thing that's apparently going to make us feel fulfilled or happy, be it riches, be it an experience, be it an event, be it a holiday. And we're always putting our happiness in the future. And the act of actually doing that is not good, because we're basing our happiness on something that isn't real. And in reality, we are sat on this treasure chest of happiness and contentment and clarity, and like everything we could possibly want in terms of feeling great and feeling happy is now, is in this very moment right now, the present moment is all that matters. The future is in the future. The future hasn't happened yet. The past is in the past. It's irrelevant. The past is gone. And the present moment, this moment right now, this very second, as you are sat here, is all that is real. So if you can be present to the moment, if you can be conscious, if you can be aware of the present moment and be happy in this present moment, that is going to be this like ultimate happiness or ultimate clarity, because looking into the future isn't the now. So the present moment, the now, is all that exists. The future doesn't exist because it hasn't happened yet. When the future is the now, the future is no longer the future because it is the now, because it is the present moment. You have to learn to appreciate the present moment, and when you are present and when you appreciate this present moment right now and the now, and have the clarity, and you can appreciate now for what it is rather than depending on the future for happiness or trying to find happiness in the future, you'll be ultimately happy and conscious and more enlightened. It starts off with Eckhart Tolle telling a story about how he was really depressed, how he was in his New York apartment and he was fucking miserable, stressed, anxious, and he sat there and he was like, I can't live with myself any longer. He thought to himself, I cannot live with myself. And have you ever had it where you're really upset and you're like, why am I like this? Why do I feel like this? I can't live with myself any longer. I can't deal with this. And you kind of question your feelings and why you feel a certain way. And Eckhart had this epiphany in the book where the actual act of questioning himself, being like, I can't live like this, or why am I like this, suggested that there's two rather than one inside your head, in the sense that there's almost two entities, like there's two things. Because the fact that you can question why you feel a certain way, or you're aware of this like presence of you don't like the way that you feel about something, or you're aware that you you feel like something and you're able to question it, you're able to question that voice in your head, is a suggestion that there is two rather than one. Like, we see the mind and we see this, like, we see our brains just as this thing that sits in our head and that's where all the decisions come from and that's it. But he goes over the idea that we have this thing called the mind. We have our mind, we have our thinker, which wants to predict the past into the future. We have that, which is this like toxic entity in the sense that it controls your life and it runs you. And then we have our true self, or our consciousness, which sits almost behind the mind. And then our true self and our consciousness is our like actual self. It is the thing that's responsible for real happiness, the thing that is responsible for like true clarity. Basically, what the mind does is it gives us anxiety, it gives us these worries, it gives us these stresses, and it clouds our judgment. It's like an entity that wants to survive, it wants to live, and it fogs the judgment of a consciousness. So I like to imagine it like, say that you have reality here, like everything, like now, like every reality, the present moment here. You have the mind here, which puts all these thoughts and feelings, which acts a bit like a filter, and then you have our true like conscious self as like a separate thing behind it. And when the mind is in the middle and is in control of these things, it puts bad thoughts into our head, it changes our perception of the present moment or the now, makes us live in the future, makes us live in the past, projects the past onto the future, gives us stress and anxiety and worry. And it's only through silencing that middleman, the mind, that you can really live in the present moment and be happy. So Eckhart basically had this epiphany that there is two rather than one. Why do we find such moments of like enjoyment and contentment? Like, we get these, have you ever had it where, let's say you see the most beautiful sunset, or you've had an amazing day and it's the end of the day, and you see this incredible view, and it just makes you feel like deep inside you get this moment of bliss and this moment of absolute clarity, and everything is perfect, and you feel contentment and you feel happy and you feel wonderful, and for a few seconds like everything's just crystal clear. Have you ever had a moment like that? Everyone has had a few moments like that in their life, and some people have them more than others. Some people live like that, other people most of us only get like a glimpse into that. And what that is, that glimpse into clarity, is a glimpse into the present moment. It's you being present, it's you being in the now, and it's you suppressing or ignoring the mind and not letting the mind control you. That is your consciousness coming through, that is you being present, and that feeling of like euphoria and clarity and joy is you being in the present moment. So the book premise is on fulfillment and happiness, and basically it's saying that we live in the past and we're worrying about the future, and that cripples us. We live in the past, we worry about the future, the mind projects the past onto the future, and we worry about what's going to happen, we worry about all these things, and that cripples us. It makes us anxious, it makes us nervous, it makes us stressed, and that is no way to live. We are always looking into the future for something, we are not in the present moment, we are always looking for something that's fake, something that's fabricated, because the future isn't real, it hasn't come yet, and all that really matters is this present moment in time, right fucking now. Eckhart Tolle describes this presence, or this like being conscious and aware, as a state of oneness. So this state of a oneness with being, and in this state is how we find true happiness, free from suffering, rather than a temporary high created by external things such as media, sex, and drugs. This state of oneness with the world, connectedness, this presence, when our consciousness is really shining through and not being filtered by the mind, is how we find true happiness. And everything else, like instant gratification, things like sex and drugs and worrying about that, and like living in the future, projecting the past onto the present, is not true happiness. We want to be conscious, we want to be present, we want to experience this happiness. How do we get there? How do we get to this state of oneness, this state of happiness, this state of consciousness? The biggest hurdle to overcome is this identification with our mind, the realization that this thing where we think that our mind and our consciousness are one. Our mind and our consciousness are one thing, and that is us and who we are. As soon as you start to realize and have this like realization that the consciousness and the mind are two different things, is the moment you're taking the power away from the mind and giving more power to the consciousness. So the realization that they're two separate things, and you are not your thoughts, you are not your mind, you are your consciousness, and in order to be present, you have to let it go, is the first step to becoming more one with yourself. It sounds very mumbo jumbo, I know. More one with yourself and more conscious and present. He says that thinking is a disease responsible for all stress and anxiety and worry. The mind lives in the past and the future, the mind doesn't live in the present. So by living in the present, you're taking the power away from the mind. You can be happy, you can appreciate the moment that you are currently in, and not worry about the future or put past events onto the future, creating more stress and worry. So sit down for a minute. Like you're probably sat there watching a video. I don't know. You might be on a train. You might be on a bus. You're probably at home because we're all quarantined. You're sat down at the minute. Sit down, relax. Like take a few deep breaths and think. Can you quiet your mind? Are you able to stop and relax? Can you stop all these thoughts going through your head right now? Can you stop this process of thoughts and like constant noise in the back of in your head going on, this little voice that's always thinking, always judging, always commenting? Can you stop that? So just try it now for a minute. Just try not to think of anything at all. Try and clear your mind and not think. If you're a normal human being and you're not some like enlightened super beast, is can you just sit there and empty your mind of thoughts? Can you just get conscious? Can you get present? Can you just not think about anything at all and not let your mind take over and not have that voice inside your head comment on anything? The answer is probably going to be no. You can't do that because you're thinking about not having any thoughts, and by thinking about not having thoughts, you're having thoughts because the thoughts are thinking about not having thoughts, and your mind is taking over again, and it's running free. This fog and constant speaking is your mind taking over, is your mind taking control. But there is a way around it. There is things that we can do to combat it and become more present and become more happy. Mind thinking with the mind projects full self and is toxic. The ego is built by the mind. Your mind is the barrier to consciousness, and the only way you can remove this barrier is by experiencing the present moment and realizing that you are not your mind, realizing that you are two, not one, realizing that you are not your mind. This awareness and this presence is the first step to becoming more present and disassociating with this mind thinking that causes all the stress and anxiety and worry. So awareness can be practiced by something called watching the thinker. And what he means in the book is watching the thinker is basically observing your thoughts, observing the mind. So rather than trying to silence the mind, what you do is you take a step back, you relax, you just look. What basically, I like to visualize things. So I imagine that you're sat down, you take a step back, and rather than your thoughts coming straight to you, you just observe your thoughts. You observe your feelings. You observe what the mind is saying. You observe all the things that it's saying to you. You don't judge them. You don't get emotionally involved in them. You just watch them. You just observe them. You just let them go by, and you accept them. And by doing this, by observing your thoughts, you have already achieved a high level of consciousness in the sense that you are not being controlled by your mind. You are observing what your mind is doing, and you are creating this separation between your consciousness and your mind, which is making you become more present. You should feel a momentary piece of clarity or bits of clarity as you do this, and like things starting to dehaze as you become more present and more clear. And the longer you do this, the more you meditate, the more you do things, the more you practice this, the more of this clarity and the less power the mind is going to have over you as you become more present and remove the energy from it. By watching the watcher or observing thoughts and feelings from the mind without judgment, you remove the energy and those feelings will subside. By observing, you remove the energy from the mind and it will die down. By not getting involved in those feelings, by not absorbing those emotions and feelings, by simply observing them, by watching the thinker, it's taking the power away from the mind. You're removing the energy and you're becoming more conscious and present, and you're going to experience more clarity and just feel a lot fucking better and not have so much of this haze. It might only be for a few seconds when you're trying to practice this, when you're trying to observe your thoughts, when you're trying to sit back, relax with no distractions. But the fact that you are conscious and you're aware of this presence of this thinker, of this thing that clouds your judgment and clouds your consciousness, the mind, this awareness is the first steps to becoming more present and becoming more in this moment and oneness with being, as Eckhart Tolle. I understand that this sounds like I'm on fucking drugs, and it's very, very weird, but that is your mind being like judging it. That is your mind not accepting or maybe not considering or not being in a place to be open to these ideas and new principles. This judgment is mind thinking, and I completely get it. I understand it, but give this book a go and see how it goes. Go into it with open mind. Maybe read it a few times, and it is fucking interesting. Try meditation as well. If you don't meditate, I've started doing it last month, and it has changed my life. It's made me far less anxious, far less reactive as a person, and I honestly wish I started doing it sooner. As you watch as you're watching a thinker, as you're observing your thoughts, as you watch the watcher and allow thoughts and feelings to subside, you might feel like a peace within you or gaps in between thoughts. And these might only be a few seconds, like I said, but that's basically you quieting the mind. You're suppressing it. You're not fighting it. Suppression is a bad word. You're not fighting it. You're just accepting your thoughts, and it's taking power away from it. And this clarity and calmness is you being more present and you being more conscious and you getting there. And the more you do it, the easier it will be to get into that state. The more you do it, the less power the mind is going to have over you. Don't think about getting in this state. Don't think about, oh, I need to get into this. Don't worry about getting into it. Just sit back, accept your thoughts, accept your feelings. Don't judge them, just accept them, observe them, and then only then will you start to experience these moments of brief moments of clarity and this awareness that is presence and oneness. So Eckhart says the problems of the mind cannot be solved on the level of the mind because the mind is the problem. The mind is the issue, the mind is the thing that's creating this problem. So your mind cannot solve the problem because your mind itself is the problem. The mind refers to thoughts and emotion is basically when thoughts meet the body and they become energized and they become present in your body. Do you know, when you're stressed, when you're worried, when you're anxious, you can feel this like tightness, you can feel this anxiety, you can feel this like almost negative energy inside you. What Eckhart is saying here is that is when thoughts have become transferred into the body and they've become emotions because you feel them. Emotions are experienced in the body, thoughts are experienced in the mind. And a lot of this book, the concepts linked to things like meditation. Meditation is all about being present and being free of the mind and relaxing. And we know that meditation isn't some mumbo jumbo hippie bullshit. It works. There's real scientific studies, there's meta-analysis on high performers, on people like a lot of CEOs, a lot of executives, a lot of people that are smashing it in business and life swear by meditation. Why do you think people go on meditation retreats? Not just some like fucking smelly hippies in the back of a van that have dreadlocks and snort ketamine every day. They're massively high up people meditate and they practice this disassociation with consciousness and this disassociation with the mind to become more present, more one, and more conscious. And you just got to be accepting and learn about it and practice it. Practice. Don't judge the emotions, don't judge your thoughts and emotions, just sit back and acknowledge them, observe them. Time and the mind are inseparable. The mind loves to judge, the mind loves to create problems, and it does this, it judges and it creates problems by living in the past. It takes past events, it takes negative emotions, negative energy, negative experiences from the past, and it projects them onto your future. So we project these negative emotions from the past onto the future, and that makes us worry, that gives us stress, that gives us anxiety. All that really matters is the now. All that matters is this present moment, and the now is the only place to escape the mind, because the now is real. The now isn't fabricated. The now is true. The now is what's happening at this present moment. The future is the future. It hasn't came yet. When the future has come, when the future is the now, the future won't be the future because it'll be the now. The past is gone. Fulfillment is always around the corner. Fulfillment is always like a stone's throw away if you're considering the mind. It's like the mind has got like this carrot on a little fishing rod and you're a horse or you're a goat and it's dangling this carrot in front of you, and the carrot is happiness, and you're running around trying to get this happiness or trying to get this carrot, but obviously because it's attached to you, you're never going to quite reach it. You're always trying to grab it, you're always trying to grasp it. And that's what the mind does in terms of happiness and fulfillment. It always projects it into the future. It always says, oh, you'll get there if you do this, keep going, you'll get there if you do this, you'll get there if you do this, you can be happy if you just do this. If you're always living in the future, that isn't relevant. The future isn't real. So what you really need to do is you need to grab the fucking carrot, take a bite out of it and eat it. And then when you've got that carrot, that is the present moment. By the realization and this clarity and living in the present moment is the way to true happiness, because it is going to get you the carrot. The mind is always seeking to escape. The mind is always seeking to survive. And as time and the mind are inseparable, it always worries about the future. Eckhart also goes on about this thing called the pain body. And what that basically is that throughout our life, any traumas, any emotional pain, any like negative past events, it leaves this like residual negative energy inside us. Everything bad that has happened to us can leave this trail of negative energy, and that accumulation of negative energy forms this almost like separate entity in our bodies known as the pain body. And that is something that's very, very negative, and it can come out at certain times in certain people, or people might even live through it. And it's basically this accumulation of negative events, negative energy that we've held onto, and it's built up into this thing called the pain body. Have you ever had something where you've just exploded? You make decisions that you regret, you live through this anger, you live through this rage, and you've just been pushed too far and you just fucking lose it. I remember when I was a kid and my granddad had died and he gave me his guitar that he loved, and he handed it down to me, and one day I lost my shit at the Xbox. I grabbed the guitar and I fucking smashed it into millions of pieces. Would I have done that if I was in like a normal present state of mind, if I was like present and conscious and like really living in the moment? Absolutely not. Like, of course I wouldn't have done that. It's only because I wasn't conscious, I wasn't present, I had this rage taking over me, this pain body. And the idea is that when this pain body takes over, it wants to further fuel the energy. It wants to do things that damage you even more. It wants you to say things that hurt other people, that hurt you even more. It wants to create more drama, more negative energy, and that's going to feed it and make it grow. The pain body and the mind they're linked. Unconsciousness creates this pain body. Not being conscious, worry, anxiety, stress, negative emotions creates this pain body, and consciousness, being present, takes the power away from it. It destroys it. The pain body and the mind are linked. They're both toxic, they're both negative, they both have negative energy, and consciousness takes away the power, takes away this like association of the mind, takes away the influence of the mind, which in turn breaks down the pain body. It's why people that meditate are known as like being Zen, or they're not so influenced by their emotions. They don't let their emotions run wild. You won't see a fucking monk like lose his shit, or someone that has meditated for many years and is really conscious and is really present and is enlightened. You wouldn't see them being bothered by little things. They just wouldn't care. It just wouldn't matter to them, because they are not letting their thoughts and emotions control them. They're simply observing them and letting them go by. When you're angry, when you're upset by something, when you are hurt, you should learn to watch the watcher. Observe how it makes you feel. Don't judge it. Don't absorb those emotions. Don't try and resist it. Just sit back, acknowledge it, and observe it. Observe and acknowledge the feeling inside you. Accept that it's the pain body. Accept that it is there. It might be difficult, but just don't shy away from it. Don't hide it. Don't suppress it. Just observe it. Acknowledge those feelings. See how you feel. Focus on them, and just don't let them be you. Don't let them take over. Don't dwell on them. Don't judge them. Don't resist them. Just accept it. Don't let the feeling turn into thinking. Don't judge. Stay present and observe. The Power of Now. Absolutely awesome book. Really liked it. Some crazy mumbo jumbo concepts. I promise you I haven't lost my mind. I understand, like, in normal education you are taught absolutely nothing like this, so it is like learning something completely alien and new. Realize that reading it, realize that if you're judging me speaking about this, it is your mind that is judging me. It is your mind not wanting to know these things. You'd rather shrug them off. You'd be like, oh, this is stupid, oh, he's lost the fucking plot. But just come to this realization that it is not you. It is, if you're very unconscious, you'll absolutely fucking hate this book. If you're stressed, if you're anxious, if you suffer from a lot of negative energy like that, you'll be living in this future, projecting the past onto the future. You'll be living through the mind, and your mind will really make you judge what I'm saying, really make you judge this book. But if that is the case, that means that you definitely should fucking read it. If you follow the principles in this book, if you take in what it's saying, it's able to make you present, it's able to make you really enjoy life and feel more fulfilled, and puts you on the right steps to getting rid of this like anxiety and stress that you may be experiencing, all these negative emotions, this tension, living through his pain body, this like anger, this rage, whatever it is, whatever stress, anxiety you're experiencing. I really believe that this can help you, and it is great in terms of putting you on the right path. That combined with meditation, when I was meditating every morning, I still am meditating every morning, but when I was reading this, I'd read this and I'd go and meditate, and holy shit, man, it would be so good, it would be so rad. And even if this book is complete and utter bullshit and it is nonsense and it was written by a crackhead that has no idea what he's talking about, even if that was the case, which it is not, even if that was the case, if you still follow the principles in this book, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, the principles themselves are going to make you more happier, and they're going to lead you to live a better, more fulfilled, content life. Because we can all agree that being present, living in the present moment is the way to happiness. It is when you are most happy. It is when you experience the most enjoyment and feel the most content and fulfilled. But yeah, The Power of Now, sick one. Give me a comment, lads, to let me know what you thought of it. And if you like these, I will be doing all my book reviews, or more book reviews like this, talking about them so you guys don't have to read the whole book, and then you can make your mind up whether you want to read it or not. But yeah, peace out. Love you to bits. Thank you.